this is part 2 of my analyzation of Genesis 3:16. And if you have not seen part 1, I urge you to go and take a look at it. But just to reiterate what I said in part 1, it was basically where we looked at Genesis chapter 3, and we also looked at the wording of what was listed there. So in Genesis 3:16, we are looking at the fact that these were consequences of sin. These were not commandments of Elohim, but they were consequences of sin, and these were curses that were passed down. So in part 1, I discussed the curses that were passed down to the serpent, to Eve, and then also to Adam. The Bible states that these were the consequences of sin. Not commandments, but they were the consequences of sin. Now, it's amazing how in Genesis 3:16, this is the only curse that some take to mean it was a commandment. And it's the part where it says, he shall rule over you. Now, there are some that will use just this one consequence of sin, and they will say, the man shall rule over the woman. And therefore, because the man shall rule over the woman, she can't teach or have authority. But it's amazing, out of the other curses, they don't say anything about those being commandments, but just the one where the man is to rule over the woman, that is taken to be a commandment. And we're going to look at this more in depth in part 2. Now, also, when you look at Genesis 3:16, Adam was not given a commandment by Elohim to rule over Eve. That did not happen. That is something that people are saying through false interpretation. There is no commandment by Elohim that tells a man to rule over his wife. That's not true. So we're going to look at this in depth, as I stated. I'm just going over briefly what I was talking about in part 1. But basically, the question is, were these curses or commands? And these are curses. Now, just to go over what the curses were, like I stated, given to the serpent, then to Eve, and then to Adam. So let's take a look at the curses that were given to the serpent as a consequence of sin. Now, the curses start with the serpent in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14, where it says, and Yahuwah Elohim said unto the serpent, because you have done this, you are cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. And that is found in Genesis chapter 3, verse 14. Now, it says that these are curses. It's listing curses. These are not commandments. The Bible itself says that he is listing curses. This is the serpent that got the curses first. And the curse of the serpent says, cursed above all cattle and above every beast of the field. Upon your belly shall you go. Now, like I stated before, obviously the serpent must have not been on its belly originally. Maybe it had wings, maybe it had feet, I don't know. But apparently, whatever mode it got around, it has now been cursed to crawl upon its belly, and dust shall it eat all the days of its life. So here we have from the Word of Elohiym, it says that this is a curse. That's what it says. Now, that is for the serpent. That's the first curses went to the serpent. Now, let's move on to the curses that were given down to Eve. Or in the Hebrew, Eve would be Kua in Hebrew. So the curses that Yahuwah gave continue with Eve, or Kua in Hebrew. And it says in Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, it says, unto the woman, he said, I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception. In sorrow you shall bring forth children, and your desire shall be to your man, and he shall rule over you. So once again, we have the curses that are given to the woman, where it says that her sorrow during conception will multiply. It also says that she will bring forth children in sorrow. And then it also says that her desire will be to her man. And it says that her man shall rule over her. So these are curses. This is not Elohim commanding that she be in sorrow during conception. It's not Elohim commanding that she brings forth children in sorrow. It's not Elohim commanding that your desire shall be to your man. It's not Elohim commanding that she will be ruled over by her husband. This is a consequence of sin. Now, moving along, the curses end with Adam. And the curses that are placed on Adam are as follows, which are found in Genesis chapter 3, verses 17 through 19. And unto Adam he said, because you have hearkened unto the voice of your woman, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, you shall not eat of it, cursed is the ground for your sake. In sorrow you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to you, and you shall eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread, till you returned unto the ground, for out of it were you taken, for dust you are, and unto dust shall you return. Now here we can clearly see that the language that he has used is said these are curses. It doesn't say anything about I command you to rule over your woman. Yahuwah Elohim is not commanding anything. He is listing consequences. Because if you're going to say that it is a law and a commandment that the man shall rule over you, just to go over what I said in part 1, then if it's his command that the man rule over his wife, then we have to make all the other curses commandments too. If we're going to make this into a commandment, if we're going to make these curses into commandments, we can't just make one into a commandment. We have to make all of them into commandments, because these were curses as a consequence of sin. So you cannot just take one part of the curse in Genesis 3:16 and just leave the rest out. So if we're going to say that it's a law that the woman has to be ruled over by her man, we have to make all the other curses a law as well. So when it comes to the serpent, then that means that it is the law that the serpent has to be upon its belly. That's a law. Then we have to say it's a law that Elohim wants women to suffer in conception. And it is a law that he wants to have women bring forth children in sorrow. And it is his law that Adam has to eat in sorrow. It is a law that he wants thorns and thistles. It's a law that he wants us to die. And we know that this is not a law. He does not want us to die. He does not want thorns and thistles. He does not want us to eat in sorrow. He does not want to multiply sorrow during conception or during pregnancy, and nor does he want man to rule over the woman. He never commanded at any time that either Adam or Eve rule over each other. As I stated, they were given dominion to rule over the earth together, both male and female. It was never his command or his law that Adam rule over Eve. They were to rule together over the creation. So anybody that teaches that this is a law that the man is supposed to rule over the woman, that is incorrect. Now, this text in Genesis 3:16, where it says the man shall rule over you, it is also being used by some people to teach that this is the reason why women are not allowed to teach. We're not allowed to teach the Torah because if we teach the Torah, we're violating this curse that they consider to be a command where the man shall rule over the woman. But we're going to look more in depth into that and see what the Word of Elohiym is saying. It's not what I'm saying. This is what the Word itself is saying. Okay, now some say that women cannot teach because she would have authority over the man. Now, according to this text in Genesis 3:16, some believe that Elohim is giving a command that men are to rule over women. And because teaching is a position of authority, a woman cannot teach the Torah or the Bible because she would be ruling over the man, which would violate this scripture in Genesis 3:16 that the man shall rule over the woman. Now, for this reason, they claim that a woman cannot at any time teach. Now, but let's look at this teaching and see if the Bible is against women having authority to teach or preach the Word of Elohim. Now, we know that when we read in the book of Genesis, chapter 1, where it deals with creation, one of the commandments that Elohim has is for his creation to be fruitful and multiply. That's one of the main things that he stresses. He stresses the fact that there are seeds and be to multiply and replenish the earth, to subdue it. That is his goal. He wants his creation to multiply. When we read Genesis chapter 1:11, it says, "And Elohim said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth, and it was so." That was in Genesis 1:11. And then we also read again where he's talking about the seed, and he's talking about being fruitful and multiplying in Genesis chapter 1, verses 27 and 28, where it says, "So Elohim created man in his own image. In the image of Elohim created he him, male and female created he them. And Elohim blessed them and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." Now here we can see in Genesis chapter 1, 27 and 28, it says that he blessed them. And Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply. Okay? And replenish the earth and subdue it. That's the key part right there, to multiply. Now, whatever Elohim made, it's clear that he commanded that it be fruitful, whether it be humans, animals, or plants. The seed is to reproduce and give birth to a new creation, to follow Yahuwah's command to be fruitful and multiply. Now let's talk about the seed of man. Now, we all know that the man produces and carries the seed. Okay, the man produces and carries the seed. But it is the woman who takes the seed of man. She carries the seed, and she nourishes the seed and gives the seed life. She gives the seed the moisture and life that humans need to grow. During creation, Elohim made it clear that he wanted Adam and Kua, or Eve, to be fruitful and multiply with each other. Now, during creation, Elohim made it clear that Kua was to be a helpmeet for Adam. During creation, Elohim made it clear that both Adam and Kua were to rule and have dominion over the creation. During creation, Elohim made it clear that Adam and Eve were one flesh. And because they were one flesh, they had to unite their bodies as one together to populate the earth with offspring or children. Adam could not be fruitful without Eve or Kua, and neither could Kua be fruitful without Adam. For this reason, Adam and Kua had to unite together to be fruitful as their Creator commanded. There was no command by our Creator that in this union, Adam and Kua were to dominate the other, either before sin or after sin. But rather, it was both sexes coming together to carry out his command to be fruitful and multiply. And Genesis 1:28 says, and Elohim blessed them, and Elohim blessed them, and Elohim said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth and subdue it. So now we're going to get into the word of Elohim. And what is the word of Elohim? Well, in Luke, it says the word of Elohim is the seed. So let's look at Luke and see what this has to say in relationship to the seed. Now, in Luke 8:11, it says, now the parable is this. The seed is the word of Elohim. And that's found in Luke 8:11. Now, the seed is the word of Elohim, according to Luke 8:11. Now, as I stated earlier, it is the man who produces and carries the seed. But I pose this question to you. Does a woman have a right to preach or teach the word and spread the seeds of the gospel of Yahushua HaMashiach? Let's examine this question. The man produces and carries the seed, but it is not fruitful unless his seed is planted into the woman. The woman takes the seed of man and she gives life to it. What happens if the man carries the seed but refuses to give his seed to the woman? Well, let's see what happens when a man does not share his seed with the woman. Let's take a look at Genesis 38, 8 and 9. And it says, in Judah, or Yahudah in Hebrew, and Yahudah said unto Onan, go in unto your brother's woman, and marry her, and raise up seed to your brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's woman, that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And that's in Genesis 38, 8 and 9. Now, here we see that the Bible says Onan spilled his seed on the ground rather than give it to his brother's woman or his brother's wife. Now, if he spilled his seed on the ground, what happens? If he spilled a seed on the ground, it can only dry out. There is no way that it can be fruitful. The Bible goes on to say that Yahuwah was not pleased with his behavior, and he killed Onan for this. The reason why Yah considered this behavior wicked was because he was killing future generations of children that could have been born to help in the Word of Elohiym. Remember, his command was to be fruitful and multiply. Spilling his seed was a selfish act. It was robbing the lives that could have been born to help spread the Word of Elohiym. So it is the same with a woman who is forbidden to preach or teach Torah. If a man forbids women from preaching or teaching the Word of Elohiym, it is the same as the wickedness of Onan. It is the selfish act that robs generations of women that could have been born to help in spreading the word or seed of Elohiym. So I'm going to end this at this point here, but there will be a part 3. But this was just dealing with the seed, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper in part 3, and there are more things I'm going to go over. But as we can see, that this is wickedness. Onan spilled his seed on the ground, and that violates the Torah because the Torah says to be fruitful and multiply. That was actually a command, to be fruitful and multiply. So I'm going to go into more depth about this. So stay tuned. There will be a part 3. There will be more to come. So please stay tuned. And if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. And may Yah bless you, and may you have a great day.